Bonjour et bienvenue à notre 400e balado des affaires Brassicoles. Ce balado est présenté par Innomalt. Innomalt est une malterie 100% québécoise qui offre aux brasseurs du Québec du malt exceptionnel du Québec. Pour toute information, innomalt.ca. Bonjour tout le monde encore. Merci encore pour écouter notre 400e épisode. Écoute, ça fait longtemps. Ça fait depuis à peu près 6 ans qu'on fait des podcasts. On a commencé tranquillement avec un podcast par semaine. Pendant la pandémie, on a fait un par jour. Puis presque tout ça, on continue bien sûr à faire des quotidiennes, parler de l'industrie. Et puis on a plein de podcasts qui s'en viennent avec tout ce qui se passe. On a calculé l'autre fois, je pense qu'on a plus de 400 podcasts quand on compte aussi les podcasts en anglais qu'on fait pour notre balado BBQ, The Business of Beer in Québec. Puis bien sûr, on a fait des séries comme Brewing Industry, puis tout ça. Je pense qu'on est dans presque 600 podcasts. À total, à peu près ce point-là. Aujourd'hui, pour notre 400e balado, on voulait discuter avec quelqu'un que moi je discute souvent concernant quand j'ai des questions sur le mal, tout ça. Vous l'avez peut-être vu à travers l'Ontario, à travers le Québec. C'est Matthias Haaben, c'est le maître-malteur chez Innomalt, qui, depuis sa naissance, il se promène en bicyclette. Quand il était petit, c'est ce qu'il me racontait, à travers des brasseries, à travers des malteries. Son père est un maître-brasseur en Allemagne. Puis c'est un gars qui est vraiment un peu comme Obélix, mais il est tombé dans la marmite de la bière, puis il est devenu ce qu'il est devenu. Puis c'est un gars qui, avec ses connaissances et tout ça, sa vision de la microbrasserie, et bien sûr, il nous donne plein d'aperçus différents, tu sais, qu'est-ce que ça va à la brasserie, mais aussi son expertise dans la malterie, donne à Innomalt, puis donne à plusieurs brasseurs du Québec et de l'Ontario et au Nouveau-Brunswick. C'est la meilleure façon de bien brasser sa bière. Matthias, c'est un old school, il aime ses bières clean au bout, puis si quelqu'un peut vous aider dans un marché que le monde aime beaucoup le lager, puis ces bières-là clean de plus en plus. Notre entrevue qu'on a faite avec Matthias va nous donner son histoire, sa vision. Puis bien sûr, comme je disais au début, comprendre un peu c'est quoi l'expertise qui peut amener au brasseur d'ici. Si vous avez des questions, comme toujours, leonardo@baromac.com. Cette présentation d'Innomalt, c'est une série qu'on fait avec eux autres qui s'en vient de plus en plus. Vous allez voir à travers l'année des entrevues avec du monde qui utilise des produits d'Innomalt, comprendre un petit peu qu'est-ce qui s'en vient avec eux autres. Et bien sûr, comprendre plus le travail en arrière de Innomalt, puis bien sûr, du monde comme Mathias. Merci beaucoup à tout le monde d'écouter. Plein de choses qui s'en viennent pour vous autres, des infolettes, un nouveau journal qui s'en vient au Nouveau-Brunswick. Puis bien sûr, merci à tout le monde, merci à tous les lecteurs, merci à tout le monde qui nous écoute, merci à nos fournisseurs de nous appuyer malgré les défis qui jouent ces jours-ci. Merci beaucoup. Et voici Matthias Haaben. Matthias, how are you?
Thank you, fine. Welcome.
First of all, like I was saying in the beginning of the interview, the intro, before you came here, I was talking with Sylvain from Voue International, and he told me tons of great stories about you. Like he told me, like you are like the king of beer, stuff like that. He was telling me the best of the best. So if you see Sylvain, just make sure to say hi.
Wow, yeah. I'm having my qualities, yeah.
Excellent. The idea behind why we're talking today, because something that we wanted to understand your background a little bit like this.
Okay.
Like I said, I've talked to a couple of people about you. I asked around, and everybody told me that you have like a very interesting background. And the idea behind this is like we like to understand who you are, and we'd like to tell me how was the beginning.
Well, we can begin actually with my childhood. I was born in Cologne, in Germany, so I'm a German citizen, and my dad was a brewmaster as well. So I learned how to ride a bike on a brewery yard, and was ever living in breweries ever since. After high school, I decided to pick up the profession of my dad. So I went into an apprenticeship in Germany for getting brewer and maltster with my dad, actually. And after that, and my military service, at that time it was mandatory to go to military. I went to university in Weihenstephan and finished there with a diploma brewing and malting engineer. It's actually an equivalent or even more than a master degree in an American university.
Like a PhD, something like that?
Not quite a PhD. There's still something going. You can get a PhD on that as well. But it's a little bit higher than a master degree.
Okay. Before, tell me, what was the where were you born? I mean, what was the brewery?
I was born in Cologne.
I mean, your brewery. Where did you work when you were a kid? What was the name of the brewery?
In the breweries, okay. The breweries were when my dad was when I was born was Zester Brewery in Cologne. This brewery was sold, and the trademark is still existing, but the brewery is closed.
Okay.
And then he moved on to the Black Forest, and the brewery there is Rothaus. And this is actually a quite famous brewery. It was for the longest time a shooting star. They're making about 1 million hectoliter beer a year. Not quite, let's say 750,000. And that's quite decent for a German brewery. There are only a handful of breweries that are making around that amount of beer.
So tell me, what kind of brewery was it? I mean, was it like a very, like an old school brewery?
It is very old school. So when my dad came there, they still had a qu'il chef, if you know a cool chef. So that means an open cooling after the brew house. So that means they had a copper basin where they put the wort in to let it cool. And there were a lot of. They had. They also had wooden lager barrels, so where you've finalized the beer not in a tank but in a wooden big wooden barrel. I learned how to clean those guys. It's a good thing that they're not in use anymore.
What was that?
Well, it's a very confined space, and to get in there, you have to lay on the side and crawl in there. And as you know, after the lagering, you still got the yeast in there, so you're kind of slushing in on the yeast.
So you're kind of like tipsy a little bit on there.
Yeah, you're just gonna look very, very bad when you're in there, and it's very confined, and you have to make sure that all the CO2 from the fermentation is gone, and it's just unpleasant. And so this is a good thing that those little barrels are gone. They are only 80 hex big. They were only 80 hex big, so yeah, it was not a good thing to have.
So tell me, after your study, after you getting the diploma, what happens afterwards?
Afterwards, so I went to university. During university time, I went to after the apprentice. First of all, I went to Hülimann in Switzerland. This is also a kind of a interesting brewery. It's not existing anymore. Hülimann, the owner, was a little bit a special guy. He believed in things that I'm not actually believing in,
like magic, something like that.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. So, for example, he made a midnight beer that actually had to be brewed exactly when it was full moon and midnight, and so that was something. And on top, he had some. He put copper. He had a stainless steel brew house, but he put copper plates in there because he totally believed that this is helping his beer. There might be something to that, but very doubtful.
I thought it was like for werewolves or something.
Yeah,
like that.
the copper is giving up some ions over the time, so it might help, but it's So that was one of his beliefs. The brewery was very famous for its non-alcoholic beer at that time.
Okay.
It was Birel. That was at that time basically the only non-alcoholic beer I knew. They produced it with special yeast and stopped fermentation. And the brewery was also famous for exporting their yeast. So they harvested the yeast and pressed it as much as possible, getting the water out of the yeast, put it in bags and in little like a bucket, and they sent this yeast all over the world. So in Africa, a lot of breweries were brewing with Hürlimann yeast. After that, I went for 3 months to Bitburger as a brewer. Worked there on shift. There's not a lot to say about Bitburger. It's a very modern brewery.
It's a big brewery also.
Big brewery. At that time, they made about 2 million hectoliters or something like that. And there were a couple of things happening during that time. And I mean, it's now 40 years ago. I guess I can tell it now. One time I came in for work on a Friday for my late shift to clean the brew house, and everybody was kind of very excited and what is going on. So they had sent the last brew to the fermentation cellar that was on the other side of the city through a pipeline, and they never received it. So at least that's what they said. So that was 1,000 hectoliter of wort disappeared. And so the brewmaster back then went in his car and drove along the pipeline, and suddenly he saw in the field several cows standing in the middle of foam. So the pipeline actually had a leak, and during the whole week, so it was not the last brew that was missing, it happened just to be exactly the amount of one brew that was missing, and that was on that field there. That was one funny thing happening. The other one was not that funny. I came to work on a Monday morning after I cleaned the brew house on Friday, and everything was quiet. And I was, why? So it turned out that the grist mill exploded, and they had two grist mills side by side, and they were connected by the grist hopper. So one mill exploded, ignited the hopper, and ignited the other mill. You cannot believe how this explosion impacted this brewery. So the building where the mills were sited was built from concrete elements, and they didn't flew out, but they were flipping out. So, and there was a steel door in the big room where those two mills were. The door was, one of the side of the doors were open, and the other side was closed. The side that was closed was ripped out and shredded. The door led into a stairway, and on top of the stairways there was a skylight. They found this skylight about 2 kilometers away. This was such an explosion, and the fortunate part of this whole happening was that the guy who started that mill was in that room just a minute before, just to checking everything is running. Then he went down to the control stand when it happened. So he was fine.
Okay, good.
For me, I was for the longest time under suspect that I left something in the mill. I went right away and looked for all my tools and toys that I was using to clean the mill. I found everything, so I left nothing in the mill. It wasn't me. But there is always a certain suspicion. 5 years later, the same mill sparked again. So it was a construction, a general construction issue with that mill. So that was kind of a relief. So I was kind of, it wasn't me.
So how old were you when you started working for
I was in my 20s somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
So after school, like one of the things we touch is your school when you get your diploma. Can you tell me more about the diploma? How does it work?
That was still before I had my diploma. That was working as a brewer. So during university, then I went on and worked also in other breweries. I helped starting up a brew pub, and I worked in a malt house. It's a couple of malt houses actually. And then after my diploma, I went to now it's missing. A Dinkel Brewing in Stuttgart. There I was hired as a director's assistant, technical assistant to the director. And my department was to educate, to train the apprentices, and to supervise the programming of the CPUs and networking them.
Okay.
That was back then. So, what we created there on the network was for that time revolutionary. I mean, we had a system I think nobody else had like that, so fast and so sturdy. Really nice system. That's where I learned my programming skills, and so I basically know how networks are working and how to program a CPU. PLC, sorry, I said CPU, was that PLC. After that, I went to another big brewery, and I left this job actually because the brewery was sold, and I didn't want to be in a big kind of conglomerate of breweries. I went to Jever as assistant head of production, but this didn't work out because it was, let's just say it didn't work out. It was
different philosophies.
It was a corporate.
Okay, so you always like to work with people that have done big corporations.
Basically, what I learned during my whole career was don't go to corporate. Corporate is always bad.
Because you're kind of like a punky, a little bit punk about it.
Sorry?
You're kind of like a punk when you do for beer or stuff like that.
Punk?
Punk, like more like free spirit.
Yeah. So I enjoy working for people that are independent and not kind of following those corporate rules where the top is beating the lower ones and the other ones are just crawling in the asses of the top ones.
That's good. So how many brewers have you been working since the beginning of your career? I mean, since the beginning of your birth, I guess.
Well, let me count. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, well, roughly 10.
Okay. So, as you start your career, when you begin your career when you were born there,
Yeah.
some people you just choose to stay more in the brewing part. You went to the malting part.
Yeah, in Germany, the brewing and malting is one profession.
Okay.
And if you are learning brewing, you're learning malting as well.
Okay, so it's not separated.
It's not separated, and especially since the malt house, the brewery in the Black Forest where I did my apprenticeship, I did a lot of work in the malt house there, and learned the trade of malting and working with that. And then I went to other malt houses during my university times and before I went to university. So I had, before I came to Canada, I already had quite a bit of experience in malting, more than probably anybody else or a lot of people doing the brewing malting thing in Germany. I went to British Columbia first, to a well-known malt house there. Unfortunately, this malt house was bought by a corporate, and as to expect, this didn't work out with me. We're going to leave it like that. Not talking too much about it.
So is there a difference with malting in Germany and malting in Canada? Do you have there's a big difference?
Yes, there are differences. To start with, the most of the varieties in Canada don't have a dormancy, or a very small dormancy. So dormancy is when after the harvest, the kernels are just not capable of growing. Okay. This is a kind of a security for those kernels, because when it's getting warmer in fall, they can suddenly sprout, and then the winter is coming and then they die. With this dormancy, they stay until the spring is coming. So the dormancy is going away kind of in December, especially when they have the colder temperatures, and then you can use it. This is one of the differences. The other difference is the varieties that are used here are very aggressive. That means they are growing like hell. You have to be very careful in keeping them under control. So you have a very small margin of moisture within. You can keep them under control, and otherwise they heat up, and then you just can dump the whole batch. And other than that, there's a difference as well. Water intake is also different in. So in Europe, you have a water in a steeping schedule that can take 2 days. So the first day you dump it in water, then you drain the water, let it sit overnight, and then you fill up the steep again. So that is kind of the normal procedure in Germany with the barley that you have there. Here, you have an 8-hour steep, and your grain is already ready to grow. This is a very, very different type of steeping. But it's working. I came here and saw it the first time, and I was, oh, what are they doing? But yeah, it's working, and it's working actually really good. And from the germination, there's not much difference. Temperatures are the same, and moistures are then the same. So there's no much difference. And when it comes to the kiln, there's also the same procedures as in Europe. But from the grain, yeah, there are differences, as I already told you.
What is the beer difference? Is it the beer difference when you start making beer, or is it exactly the same taste with different wines like that?
So what is the difference between a North American malt to a European malt? The European malts are normally not as far modified as the European malts. The European malts are less modified, because let's say I speak for the German malts. I can't speak for the British. I don't know too much about them. In the last years, this changed a bit as well. The newer varieties are developing more enzymes and also are getting more and more modified, like the North Americans. But in North America, because a lot of those craft brewers are not really doing a mashing, they're putting the grain in the water, waiting a little bit, and then they're starting to lauter. This is not a mashing for me. A mashing is you're following a temperature scheme where you have a protein rest, you have a beta amylase rest, alpha amylase rest, and so on and so on. And this is actually, I actually recommend every craft brewer to do that, because the beers that are coming out of that are way cleaner and better to drink. So they receive a better drinkability, and they get a better, they know better what kind of fermentation they are getting. But it's the choice. If you just want to go by the so-called single-step infusion, you'll get a different beer out of that, and well, some customer like that beer. So it's not that I would say go with the step infusion. It's always what your customers like. Yeah. So personally, I'm a guy that likes the clean beers. Sure enough, I'm German, but I know that there are a lot of people preferring the kind of I would call it the craft flavors, and then go for that.
So after you're in Vancouver, BC, you come here to Quebec, and start working for Innomalt.
Was a little bit different. I stopped working in BC at this malt house, and started to work on opening my own brewery.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had my business plan. I was already in talks with investors. I had already a lease contract to sign. When some private things happened that we don't need to discuss, and then Sylvain from Moe International, he kind of brought me in contact with Raphael from Innomalt. And so I worked for Innomalt as a consultant first. We went together to Germany to select equipment there for the new malt house. And one day I got a phone call from Raphael, and he was saying, "Yeah, well, we need somebody to help us producing that malt here." And I was thinking, okay, he's looking for somebody. Do I know somebody? And then I started thinking, and then he said, and then I said, "Did you just make me an offer?" And it was an offer. So after that, we discussed under what conditions, blah blah, normal things, and I got hired. So I packed up in BC, moved here, bought a house here, and that's since I'm here.
I know Raphael for a long time.
Yep.
I met him in Sherbrooke when he had his. He still has his company up there in Sherbrooke, and I remember talking about the project, about this huge project he was bringing to bring malt for the Canadian market, stuff like that. And I would like to know, can you tell us more about the company? What's Innomalt? What's happening? What is the how much you guys scheduled to bring malt into the province? And can you tell me, what is going to be the difference beside what's happening here and what's happening somewhere else?
Okay, what's the difference between here and somewhere else? We do have a certain procedure in place that makes our malt unique. And because it's making our malt unique, you won't get this procedure. It's still, it's nothing bad or so, it's just helping us to make a malt that is very, very acceptable on the market and comparable to any other major malting area like Alberta and so on.
Yeah.
What is the project? This procedure was implemented in Sherbrooke in the small malt house there, the floor malting, and it was so successful that they've started to think about expanding. That was when they are also asking me about how to make a bigger malt house and so on. So we discussed that and we're planning on this. And the final plan was building a malt house in 3 phases. The first phase would be a malt house with 6 germination boxes that each can produce 40 metric tons.
Okay.
Compared to that would be 40 metric tons per day of malt, compared to what was in Sherbrooke is 5 metric tons twice a week. And so this is the first phase of, and there is the option of putting 2 more germination areas and kilns respectively in. So that means we could in the end have 120 metric tons a day.
That's pretty impressive.
If we go all the way. It sounds impressive. I can tell you that the next bigger malt house here in Quebec, that would be in Montreal, at the harbor there, they make about 370 a day.
Okay.
And I know other malt houses, they make 500 a day. For example, in Montana, they built a brand new malt house for Euro malt, and this makes 500 a day, just like that. So that is basically the idea. Also, the idea behind, is to be quite energy efficient. The kiln that was bought has energy recuperation that saves a lot of energy. And the kilning process, and actually Raphael is quite positively surprised how little gas we use for each kilning process. Further on, we have a water recycling. So we're recuperating the water from the steeps and basically all the wastewater that has touched the grain, what is actually pretty dirty. Putting that in the sewer would make us a heavy pollutant. It's all biological, so yeah. It's not a chemical. But still, the a wastewater plant, for example, like from the city, would have a hard time working with that. And so we clean the water here and try to reuse it for cleaning purposes. And the third measurement that we are doing is every dust, every dirt from the every dust from the grain, what comes out of it, all the rootlets that we are getting from the kiln, everything that comes out of the production that is not malt, we are putting together. It's planned to press that in pellets and sell that as animal feed. So, and this is actually a very high protein animal food. So the farmers like those rootlets because there's so much protein in there.
There's a like residue that goes everywhere for the animals, everything like that.
Yeah.
One of the things about Innomalt, I remember talking to Raphael like a long time ago. So he always wanted to do something, like bring good malt for brewers, for craft brewers. First of all, never for big companies like that. And why is that? What do you think? What are you bringing to the
well, I mean, it's for a craft brewer, it should be very obvious why they should get their malt from a small brew house, not corporate. It's the same thing why a beer drinker should go to a brew pub or to a craft brewer to buy their beer, because first of all, they have the personal contact to the people that are making the product, and secondly, they support this small business industry.
So the ecosystem where you're working, where you live,
yeah,
stuff like that.
And we are getting our malt from local farmers in Quebec, and we are working with a farmer cooperative here. So that means the grain that you are using comes from this area, and we probably can even tell you what field it was growing on. So therefore, if you're going to a bigger malt house, they probably buy at least some of the grain from an elevator, and an elevator is a big silo where every farmer puts in the grain, and out comes something, but you don't know what. It has an average quality, but you don't know where it was grown.
Excellent. So the idea behind Innomalt is always to work with people locally, to do malting locally, and to make sure that the customer gets everything they know.
That's
so
right.
How can you track this? That's the idea behind it, because I know a lot of people they want to buy more local stuff, and how can you track to make sure that you're working with the malt people around here?
How they can track it?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, they have to trust us that we're buying it here. But it's a very easy thing. If we would get our malt from Western Canada, what would definitely be a possibility, because the grain there is beautiful. I know it from my former work. But to bring it from there to here,
it's super polluted. Yeah.
It's super expensive, and it's using a lot of fossil fuel to bring it here. And honestly, right now we are not even capable to take it in here, because we have a rail line in the back of our facility, but we are not connected to it. So right now you can be sure that we use just Quebec grain. I think in future we're probably not negative about using Ontario grain either, but going further, not so much.
So Quebec 100%. So have you talked to a lot of I know you guys work already with a couple of brewers here in Quebec. How's the response of you having such a big company, such a big how you call this
yeah, the problem is I haven't been talking to much Quebec brewers, because my French is still not good enough to talk to them. I have been talking to some brewers in Ontario, and they are quite fun to try something new, to see how this little malt house here in Quebec is doing, and because they also know what I was doing before, they are kind of looking forward to work with us.
I mean, you've been working for almost, let's say, 40 years in malting and beer.
I have been in malting and beer. I always say I'm 60 years old, and I'm in the brewing since 70 the years, because I was living in breweries. Since I was born, I was in breweries, and my only work ever was in breweries. So
that's you cannot do anything else.
Well, basically, yeah. I could probably do something else, but I lived for brewers.
So tell me, what are trends that you see from the beginning of your work to right now? I mean, the good thing about you moved from continents to countries, different like that. So what do you see as the trends in the market?
So when I started in Germany, the trend was at that time one brewery, one beer.
Okay.
Yeah, there were only a few breweries left, smaller ones that still did several beers. For example, Bitburger had Bitburger Pils. Jever had Jever Pils. The first thing that was happening was that they were starting non-alcoholic beers. And from there on, it was spreading more and more. And there was a trend to also Weissbier in Germany, with wheat malt from Bavaria. So those big breweries started to build up a little line of different beers. And also at the same time, in Germany, what happened was they looked a little bit to US and copied the craft industry.
Okay, yeah.
So we had a few craft brewers coming up, and the smaller breweries, the family-owned in a little village brewery, kind of got some more support from the customers. Actually, unfortunately, not enough. There have been still a lot of breweries that went down, but people are more leaning towards more varieties of beer, also in Germany nowadays. Now, looking to America, what happened? First of all, we had the first craft brewers coming up. What was basically born out of the homebrewer scene. So accordingly, the quality of the first beers were kind of doubtful. The first time I went to the what is that? Craft Brewers Conference and it was in San Diego. I went to, that was 2004, and I went to AleSmith Brewing. Very well recommended name nowadays. And I was looking at their equipment. I was just shaking my head. As a German brewer coming there, they were kind of brewing in buckets and things I would not consider brewing equipment.
You should have seen here before here.
It
was like milk, the milk.
The milk actually exactly what they were using for mashing and fermenting. And I tried their beer. It was a very dark beer, and I was thinking, really hoppy like hell, West Coast.
Yeah.
And then it turned out that this brewery was really successful. They have now they have a big brewery in San Diego with a state-of-the-art brew house and doing a lot of beer. And people like their beer. Okay. kind of the same thing with Sierra Nevada, for example. I've seen their first brew pot, and it was really a brew pot. I saw it still in working. It was not at Sierra Nevada anymore. It was in a different brewery, and it was horrible. And then I slowly came to the conclusion that those people are able to make a drinkable beer that the customer likes in that equipment. I want to see a German brewmaster do that. I'm not sure whether they can. So I started to really appreciate what those guys are doing.
Okay.
And that was my way of developing into this craft industry. So I was not blaming them for making crazy beers or something. I was actually saying, well, you're doing a good job. If your customer likes it and you're getting it out of this system, well, chapeau. So that was my experience. And where's the craft industry going? They started out doing a lot of ales, and the customer base is getting a little bit tired of all those ales and IPAs, and they're looking backwards again to the lagers. Honestly, I don't think they are looking backwards to the lagers, but to the more drinkable beers.
So cleaner beer, less...
Exactly. So, and that is something I definitely can relate to. My beers. I do have a little pilot brewery in my basement, doing pilot brews for Innomalt. But if anybody wants to do the pilot brews, I can do it on a 30-liter scale, and they're very clean beer. Even come out of ale from an ale yeast. It's always a matter of how you're treating the yeast, and how you're treating the whole brew during the fermentation and mashing and boiling.
So I guess everything is going full circle, I guess. Full circle. People are coming back to the cleaner beer, stuff like that before.
Yeah, we're going back to the cleaner beer. That doesn't mean necessarily they go back to the big guys. They're kind of making thin beers, not necessarily clean beers. I actually don't know any big guy beer that is good enough for me for drinking. I have not had a big... there are a few attempts like Keef, the what is that? O'Keefe beers. No,
O'Keefe, that's very long. That's very long time ago. I don't think it's...
No, I don't know the name now. It's an ale. It's a red ale. It's drinkable, but nothing special. And therefore, if anyhow possible, I always try to get a craft beer anywhere where I am, because those guys are trying their best to get a nice beer out of their systems, and I know how their systems are looking. Probably not good.
So besides the getting malts from you locally produced or like that, what kind of services can Innomalt bring to for brewers?
Well, service. The brewers are going to get in contact with us, and we can help them to choose their ingredients for their beers. We can even help them developing the recipes if they need some help on that. They always have the possibility to get in contact with us for specific questions they have about the brewing process or something. And it's just we are going to be there for them and not letting them alone with their problems.
Because there's a big problem. Because there's always like that when you work with beer. Malt, it's a if you know how to use it, it can pretty much destroy your beer.
There are always problems with anything, the big and small problems. I had an issue once. A brewer was complaining about using our malt and not getting the right extract. So I happened to be on a tour to customers at that time, and it happened to be exactly in that area. This brewery was not a normal customer of ours, but he couldn't get the malt he was normally using. So he took our malt, and so I went there and took a look at. It was just the day after his brew, and his spent grain was still sitting in the backyard. So I looked at the spent grain and saw uncracked kernels in the spent grain. So that would explain some of the less extract that he was getting. And then I discussed, what did he do? Well, he was throwing all the malts he had at the same time in the mill without adjusting the mill. And one malt that he was also using had a way smaller kernel size. Okay. So what happened was our malt, that was bigger in kernel size, pushed those rollers to the side, and the smaller malt just fell through without getting milled. There you go. You have a less efficiency in your malt house. So the solution to that is just mill it separately, and maybe even adjust the slit a little bit.
So the idea is always you can bring that kind of troubleshooting for all the brewers.
I mean, I wouldn't say all the time, because a lot of times we are lacking the evidence, so to say, so we don't have the spent grain sitting in the or something. But a lot of times, we can help them troubleshoot whatever is happening to the brew. We can tell you something.
Excellent. So Matthias, if someone wants to get in contact with you because if they have any problems, new clients, how does it work?
That's they can get in contact with me anytime they want.
Do you have a special email, like a Batman email, something like that?
Yeah, it's mhaaben@innomalt.com .ca. Sorry.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you as well.
Hope to see you soon, and hopefully people are going to get more and more work with you guys, because local malting is very important.
Yeah, that is getting more and more important, and especially for the craft brewers, in my opinion, they shouldn't go for those industrial malt they should take the things that are out there that are growing next to their brewery.
And helping the local economy also.
Exactly. Local farmers, local malt houses.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you as well.
Merci beaucoup à tout le monde d'écouter notre 400e épisode des Affaires Brassicoles. Comme toujours, si vous avez des questions, envoyez-moi un courriel à leonardo@baronman.com. Puis bien sûr, abonnez-vous à notre infolette pro qui change chaque semaine. Et bien sûr, notre section pro, vous avez du contenu, des analyses plus poussées que sur notre site web. Ça vous coûte $120 par année, $10 par mois. Puis en plus, vous appuyez Baron Mag. Et bien sûr, notre prochain numéro qui s'en vient, c'est Brewing Industry en anglais, numéro 3, début mars, qui va être au congrès au Nouveau-Brunswick. Puis bien sûr, merci beaucoup à tous nos fournisseurs, à tous nos lecteurs, à tout le monde qui nous écoute à chaque semaine, puis à chaque jour. Puis bien sûr, si vous avez des questions, envoyez-nous encore un courriel. Si vous avez besoin de malt fait au Québec, 100% québécois, contactez bien sûr innomalt.ca, notre commanditaire pour ce podcast-là. Merci beaucoup et à la prochaine.